Hello and welcome back to my office. My name's Michael Jex and this is all for the Scavengers. Thanks for your patronage so far. I did promise I was going to answer this one for Omar, and basically Omar's got some questions about how easy it is to write humour and the best way of putting humour down on paper. As he said, the more you try to be funny, the less likely it is that your jokes will land. And you're absolutely right. It's very, very difficult writing humour, which is why there's so few people who do it successfully. There's a few people like Simon Brett does it well, Ruth Dudley Edwards does it well. You've also got Douglas Adams with The Hitchhiker's Guide. You've got Terry Pratchett, P.G. Wodehouse, George MacDonald Fraser. There have been a number of really good, successful writers over the years who have managed to inflict humour on their protagonists, let us say. But it's very difficult. Do I agree with the statement that the more you try to be funny? Yes, I do. I think you're absolutely right, Omar. It's very, very difficult trying to hit the right balance. There's some people who believe that spontaneity is the most important thing, and generally when writing books I think that spontaneity is crucial. But then again, you go to someone like Douglas Adams, who really crafted every single sentence enormously. I read once that when he was trying to think up the number that would be funniest for one of his books, when he was talking about the meaning of life, and it came up with the answer of 42. 42. He went through a whole series of numbers over the space of weeks trying to figure out which number would be funniest. He decided number 42 was funniest. Was he right? Well, the success of the book seems to imply yes, he was, but how do you come up with something like 42 as being amusing? I've no idea. I think a lot of work, such as Terry Pratchett's or P.G. Wodehouse's, you can read it and it just seems to be so delightful. The words flow effortlessly. That is no indication of how much work went into them, though, because for it to read so effortlessly means that they probably had to rewrite those sentences 5, 6, 7, 10 times or more. How can you actually try to emulate them? Well, I would say the first start point is imagine yourself talking to a good friend or a member of family and try to tell them a joke. Possibly actually do it verbally. Don't write it down at first, but talk into one of these convenient little dictation machines and see how it works best for you. So tell the joke several different times, several different ways. See how you can inflect more amusement, more humour into it each time you do it. That's what comedians do, after all. They don't just have an idea for a joke, stand up in front of an audience and tell it. They have an idea for a joke and then they'll tell it to themselves many, many times. They'll record themselves telling the joke. They'll see what works best for them. And then only when they've done all that will they put it down on paper, and then they'll go and rehearse it and then go in front of an audience. So it does take a lot of time and effort. If you imagine you're telling it to someone else, though, it gives you more... I've used the word spontaneity. It gives you more of an atmosphere when you're telling it, I think. And then you can write the words down from your dictation machine and see which format works best for you. Do bear in mind, not everybody is a natural comic. Now, I mentioned Simon Brett. He is a hugely witty, entertaining character. He's a wonderful after-dinner speaker. He is a great man on his feet. He writes entire stories in poetry. He has written lots of plays. He's written over 100 books. He's a very, very talented man. But he doesn't hit the mark every time. And quite a few of his jokes in his books I've found utterly unamusing. Ruth Dudley Edwards is a fantastic lady. She has brilliant concepts for characters, locations, scenes, but quite often her work is not that amusing. Sometimes she just misses the mark. People do. So don't assume, even if you want to write humorous books, don't assume you necessarily can. It's a very hard job. I had written, 32 in the Templar series, Act of Vengeance 33. I've written the trilogy, so all told I'd written 38 books, I think, before I embarked on Rebellion's Message, which was the first of my humorous books. I've injected humour into my books. That's different from writing books which are intended to be humorous. You can always have a scene or two that's amusing. I didn't know that I could write humour before I started on Jack Blackjack and the Bloody Mary series. I had no idea whether my idea of humour would work. I've been delighted to find that it does seem to. And I was thinking about this. I was trying to analyse what works for me. I should just apologise. I keep getting broad sunlight out there and then it goes dark and cloudy. So that's why I'm going horribly bright and then back to gloomy and grim. Apologies for that. So I was trying to work out where you get humour from, and it came down to, I think, a few things. One thing I thought was that a lot of humour comes from tragedy and the incompetence of the protagonist. And you can see that a lot with things like Charlie Chaplin. Some mothers do have Faulty Towers. They're all people who can't, or they depict people who cannot cope with modern day life. They cannot cope with events. Even seemingly simple little matters can throw them completely. To an extent, I think a lot of the humour comes from letting the reader feel that they're watching somebody who is utterly incompetent compared to them. It gives them an air of, it gives the reader or the viewer an air of a feeling of superiority. And, oh look, there's two men walking across the road carrying a big sheet of glass. He's cycling down the road. He can't see the glass because he's looking straight through it. So you, the reader, the viewer, whatever it might be, can see that scene. You can think, oh, fool, he's going to go straight into that panel of glass. And he does. There's a surprise. But that's the feeling of superiority because you have more knowledge than the poor devil who's actually going through it all. Does that make sense? I think it does. So there's that. There's also the attributes that you give your characters. Now, Jack Blackjack, poor old fellow in my Bloody Mary series, he knows that he's God's gift to women. He knows they can't resist him. He knows he's brave. He knows he's handsome. He knows he's very talented at what he does. And the humour in those books comes from the fact that I'm telling it from his point of view. So I'm telling you, this is why I am such a clever person. This is why, the women fall over at my feet, etc. You as the reader can read on all the signals I'm giving out, though, and see that those women don't fancy you. Those women think you're an idiot. Your talent means you've just got arrested again. Your courage means you've just run away from yet another fight. Everything is turned on its head by the reader interpreting what he's actually saying. And I think that works very well again. Again, it's giving the reader the feeling of superiority. And that's the case in exactly the same way with P.G. Wodehouse when he was talking about Jeeves and Wooster, for example. Jeeves felt himself to be an intelligent, sensible fellow. His butler was infinitely more educated, infinitely brighter. That was the dog walking past, making a row. I apologise for that. And so you, the reader, get much more of a superior view because you're reading what Jeeves is saying and also seeing that the main protagonist, Wooster, is really a bit of a fool. Is that helpful? I hope it's helpful. It's a bit different. There are many, many examples of really good writers who are very humorous, very entertaining. The main thing is, though, always for every writer, to discover what your style is. It could be that you've got a humorous side to you which works very, very well on paper. But don't forget that even if you're really good as a comedian, you're really good at writing things down, that doesn't necessarily translate into an amusing situation for the reader. You have to put the reader into a position where they can see what's happening, get that feeling of superiority over the main protagonist, and that way they will enjoy the stories and get more amusement from it. But if you really want to follow this, though, Omar, the main thing I would suggest is really concentrate hard on reading as many different books as you can. Go through them again. P.G. Wodehouse, go through Terry Pratchett, have a look at Richmore Crompton, the Just William books, because they're written for children, yes, but the original books were written for adults, about children. And you get a different perspective when you realise that. They are very entertaining books. Yes, George MacDonald Fraser too, with his Flashman series. There are so many writers who are really, really talented at writing humour. It's very, very difficult. But try to discover what your own style is, try to discover where you feel comfortable, and that way it will start to flow much more naturally. And when you can have it flowing naturally, that's when the books will start to work. Don't think there's much else I can say on that. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks again for your patronage, which is really important, especially this year. Next week, I've got a bit of a special. I'm going to be putting up a short story that I've finally completed. It's not going to be unique to Patreon, but I'm putting it up for my patrons before it goes anywhere else. Hopefully it'll appear in a little while in the Crime Readers Association websites. But for now, it'll be up on Sunday the 31st, or is it going to be the 1st of June? Either way, it'll be up on Sunday. You can enjoy it then. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks a lot for your patronage. Take care.